our gut microbiome is our first line of defense against all kinds of pathogenic bacteria and yeasts and other stuff, right? It protects us and it creates vitamins and like it turns some vitamins into other vitamins that are essential to us. It creates short chain fatty acids, which are anti-inflammatory and gut healing and all this stuff. I had leaky gut and I took L-glutamine supplements, like trying to heal my gut and everything. I just was not feeding my good bacteria, even though I took
Wow.
probiotics. The probiotics are transient, so they help on the way, but they don't stick around.
Hey guys, it's Megan and welcome back to the How I Healed It podcast. Today I have the honor of chatting with Lissa from Rawfood Romance. Lissa has an incredible healing story that I'm so excited for you guys to hear. After trying lots of different things to heal her body, she decided to go raw and eat only raw fruits and raw veggies. And consequently, she healed her gut issues, Candida overgrowth, cystic acne, joint pain, mood swings, irregular and overly painful periods, heart palpitations, and more. Not only did she switch to a raw vegan diet, but she did this in Canada, not in the tropics. She began this way of life in 2014 and not only healed from that long list of ailments, but also lost 70 pounds in the first year and a half. She's still raw vegan today, nearly 10 years later, which is wild. She's passionate about recipe creation, gut health, shifting mindsets, affirmations, and inspiring others. And Lissa, you have been such a huge inspiration to me. I have been following you the last 2 years over my healing journey when I started learning a little bit more about the benefits of eating more raw veggies and more raw food. And it was really hard for me at first to find recipes. And that's when you came into my life. I have all of your books. I love all of her recipes are absolutely amazing. I have made so many of them. And so I'm so thankful and so excited to have you on. I know it's going to be an inspiration to so many people.
Thank you so much for inviting me on. This is going to be so much fun, like you said. And I'm so happy that I can inspire you and you could enjoy more delicious raw foods. Because that's my whole purpose, is to inspire people to eat more raw foods, whether they go all raw or not. That's totally up to them. But I just want people to eat more raw foods.
Yeah.
And, to take the stigma away from it's just rabbit food. Because I know a lot of with that too. So
yes, that is true. The jokes are real when you head that direction.
Yep.
So what's your story? How did you end up in this world of raw food? How did you discover raw food? What led you to that lifestyle change?
Yeah. So long story, but when I was younger, my mother was always really into health. She wasn't vegan or anything, but she strived to always eat only organic and, all that stuff. And she wouldn't indulge in the stuff that my dad, brother, and sister and I would. We ate a lot of candy, a lot of junk and pizza and you name it. But my mom would always eat really clean, really, natural and that kind of thing. So I always admired that about her.
Yeah.
And then when I was about 19 years old-ish, I was having serious yeast issues and I wasn't breastfed as a baby. So my gut started out at a disadvantage and I had serious gut problems, lots of painful gas and bloating, diarrhea and constipation. I was never diagnosed with IBS, but I had symptoms of it. And I went to a naturopath and she did a bunch of tests on me and was like, you have Candida overgrowth. Follow this anti-Candida diet and take all these probiotics and herbs and everything, and you'll get rid of it. And it helped a little bit, but I was never changing the foundation of what I was doing. And it just kept coming back. And then I started working at a natural health food store when I was in my early 20s. And in 2004, that's when I started to discover raw foods. It was through David Wolfe and this, Sun Food Diet kind of stuff.
Cool.
Giuliano had his raw book. So I was really intrigued by raw food. It made sense, but I never had the vegan connection. I was just like, oh, raw food. So I tried for the next decade.
Wow.
Yeah, trying to do raw. But the thing was, when I look back now, I see where I was struggling so much was, number one, I was stuck in diet culture.
Right.
I was stuck thinking I needed to eat less, move more, restrict my calories, ignore my cravings, distract myself,
Yeah.
eat super high amounts of healthy fats and eat animal products. You know, I was stuck in diet culture and all those ideas. And so whenever I would try raw, I would be eating very low calorie and very high fat because I wasn't eating enough fruits and vegetables, which is the basis of raw food. I was eating too many avocados and nuts and seeds and coconut and stuff like that because I was compensating for the calories I wasn't eating. And I was wondering, like, why am I so tired? Why? Like, I felt better because I wasn't eating junk food. I wasn't drinking energy drinks every day. I was eating more plants, obviously, but I just wasn't getting that, like, you know, magic thing everyone was talking about, like raw food's so amazing. So in I would say 2012 area, I joined a gym and I joined this challenge that required you to have a personal trainer. And it was like a 2-month challenge. And the best transformation won like a year of personal training or a trip somewhere. So I was like, oh, I'm going to do this. Right.
Cool. Yeah.
And I wasn't raw or vegan at the time. And my personal trainer would check off, like, she would check off my day my day would be like 800 calories sometimes. Like when I look and enter everything into Chronometer, it was between 800 and 1200 calories a day. And I was like, no wonder she sent me home from the gym twice, right? Like,
oh, wow. It's because you just were not getting enough calories.
Yeah.
Oh,
and I was eating really high fat. I was eating animal products and I just was not like, I didn't enjoy it. And I did lose some weight, obviously, because I was at the gym almost every single day and I was under eating.
Yeah.
But I was like, if health is this challenging, what is the point? Like, I didn't enjoy my life. I was like struggling with what to eat. I was eating like really low variety of foods. Like every night it was like chicken and broccoli or chicken and asparagus and oatmeal and whey protein in the morning, like almost every day. And I was really bored with that. I was not eating a lot of variety. My joint pain was so severe. My cystic acne was breaking out like crazy. Yeah, I lost some weight, but like, was it worth it? It was not worth it. So after that challenge, that's when I went into like the worst, probably 8 months of my.
And how old were you at this point?
I was about anywhere between 32 and 33. I don't remember the exact, but I was around there.
Okay.
Yeah, 33 probably. And I like went on this like bender. I was eating everything and anything. And I worked at the health food store and I knew better, right? But I was just like, I had restricted myself for 2 months. And my body was like, I need.
Yes.
And I was just defaulting to what I wanted, what was habitual, what was convenient and tasty. And I was like, oh, well, I'll just eat this and then I'll get back on the program after.
Right.
And
which is a really natural response to restricting yourself so much when you're just like not happy. There's no abundance. And then it's like, okay, I'll just take this break and then I'll be so disciplined again. I feel like everybody does that. It's a really natural reaction.
And I feel like it's also there because of the foods, right? Like we wouldn't have this like, you know, I'll start tomorrow and I'll do this, blah, 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 like this back and forth if we weren't eating those foods in the first place.
Right.
But because they exist, it creates this cycle that most of us go through, right?
Yeah.
So in 2014, I was 34 and I was having like these heart flutters. I was eating like the worst food ever. I was drinking 1 to 2 energy drinks a day plus coffees. I know I was eating like some breakfasts would be a bag of Doritos. I ate like chicken things from the gas station that was on the street. Like I ate chocolate bars for snacks. I was like really eating things that were not aligned with my body. And so in September 12th, 2014, I woke up and I had been waking up pretty regularly. It'd be like 4 to 6 nights out of the week. I'd wake up with these heart flutters, these palpitations in the middle of the night. And it would feel like I was having a heart attack.
Oh.
And then I couldn't get back to sleep because I'd imagine what it would be like to have a heart attack. And I'd be like scared. And I hated going to sleep. That was like the worst time of the night. I was anxious to go to bed because I knew this was going to wake me up at some point.
Wow.
So I wake up this one morning with these heart flutters again. And I was like, that's it. I have to do something because I cannot keep living like this. And that was really my rock bottom. Like I
Yeah.
thought, before I'd be like, I'm at my rock bottom, but
Mm-hmm.
you don't know your rock bottom until you
You're
start
there.
moving up from it, right?
Right.
So I was like, okay, well, I always resonated with raw. So I'm going to go back through my old journals. I'm going to start watching a ton of YouTube videos, get re-inspired by the people who used to inspire me, like Fully Raw Christina. Marcus Rothkrantz really inspired me back in the day too. So I was watching a lot of their videos. And in one of Fully Raw Christina's videos, somebody, I'm grateful to whoever this was, mentioned in the comments was like, if you want to go vegan, watch these 3 movies, Cowspiracy, Earthlings, and Forks Over Knives. And I was like, okay, I'm going to watch those. Cause I was like, just like absorbing as much inspiration as I possibly could to like push me into this new way of eating. I watched those 3 movies. And for the first time in my life, even though I'd tried raw food for 10 years, I finally had the vegan connection. And I was like, I was vegan overnight.
Wow.
There was no way I was going to eat any animal products whatsoever for the rest of my life. And I was like, well, I guess I'm going to do raw because it made sense, right? So, and I also never had any experience with whole food plant-based diet, like cooked vegan foods and stuff. I never really dived into that. And so I always thought vegans ate mostly raw anyways. So I was like,
oh, interesting.
no idea. Yeah, I was just like, okay, well, raw vegan it is. And from that day, I quickly learned, because I was really trying to absorb as much information as I could, I quickly learned I needed to eat enough calories and I needed to eat low fat. And I'd never tried the low fat version because I was indoctrinated to believe we needed like huge amounts of all these healthy fats.
Yeah.
So I was scared to eat low fat. I was really scared. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to try it. Fully Raw Christina's been doing it for X amount of years. I'm like, I could do it just for a little bit and see how I feel.
Yeah.
And that was what worked for me. I was like, this is amazing. I feel satiated because I'm eating enough. And I was eating, obviously, because like I follow like the 80-10-10 where it's like 80% carbs, 10% fats, 10% protein. So I was eating like over 2,000 calories worth of fruits and vegetables. I was eating abundantly and I was trying new recipes and low fat. So I had way more energy and I just felt really good. And so, and then I just stayed doing that.
Wow.
That's
amazing. I love the word, and I hear you say this often, is abundance in food, that having that abundance mindset. And when it really does have abundance and variety, then you don't feel like you're missing out on anything. You don't feel like you're missing out on the old things. And especially when you begin to feel better and better, which it sounds like that's obviously what happened for you, is you just felt better and better. And Forks Over Knives I loved that documentary. That was really eye-opening for me. Dr. Campbell and Esselstyn were amazing. And they have the China study, which is an incredible book on the low-fat vegan diet and the benefits of that. And now they do a lot more cooked foods than raw foods. And I heard you say raw just made sense to me, even after watching the Forks Over Knives, which isn't as much. I mean, they don't emphasize raw; they just emphasize low fat vegan. Yeah. Do you think it made sense to you to go raw because of your exposure to it through those books and stuff previously?
Yeah, because I would always default to raw. I'd be like, in my diet culture days, I'd be like, I'm going to go on a diet, right? And I'd always choose raw,
right?
Because it just it made sense to eat things the way nature made them. Plus, I wasn't like the biggest fan of cooking. So I was like, oh, I like that I could just chop a salad, like so easy, blend a smoothie, super easy, right?
Totally.
So I really resonated with that. And plus, I really liked the hydration and the freshness. And I've never been a person who really liked hot foods. Like, I've never been a fan of rice. Not really the biggest fan of beans necessarily. And that's just me, right? Like, we all have our preferences and stuff, but I just never was a fan of like the really hot foods unless they were takeout or, loaded with the salt and oil and everything.
Yes.
But when it was like the healthy whole foods, I just resonated way more with the raw stuff. I'd rather eat a big fresh raw salad than a cooked plant-based meal. And again, it's nothing against people who want to eat that, but I just found that I gravitated over to the raw a lot more. So I was like, well, salads it is.
Yeah. And I think so fun and eye-catching about your story is your before and after photos are just absolutely amazing. So if you're listening to this, go over to Instagram or Facebook and check out Lissa's before and after, because to see the way that your skin has transformed. I mean, we're doing this video as well, and just looking at her skin, it's just glowing. Like, your skin is beautiful. And cystic acne can be quite painful, and it's red and it's painful and it's just blotchy. And so to see your skin transformation and your body, like, you look phenomenal. And to go from restriction, like you were saying, around 800 calories a day, to abundance in your calorie intake, but then your body lines up with like life and health, is really cool. So it's really fun. So make sure to check out her before and after pictures. They're just incredible. And what also was really inspiring to me about your story is the fact that you were able to heal Candida. I think that is something that I've heard and seen so many people, and I myself have gone through and have tried so many different things. I actually don't know that I know one person who's successfully actually balanced out their Candida. And then hearing you and some of the friends that you've talked with on your Instagram lives talk about Candida and being able to balance that out. And every body is different, because I've heard you interview people who they'll do all veggies for a season and then they'll balance out their Candida. But then also just the idea that you could take on Candida and eat buckets of fruit is just like the most amazing thing. And that's what you did.
Yeah. So I love that you brought that up, because that's a question that I get asked often, is like, well, if I'm dealing with gut dysbiosis or Candida overgrowth or whatever, I shouldn't be eating fruit. Now, when I was diagnosed at 19 with Candida, I went on multiple different anti-Candida diets, which were like no fruit. Basically, the only fruit that we could have was Granny Smith apples and berries, like the really super, super, super low glycemic ones that weren't very sweet. So, and then they emphasized heavily on the animal products and the fats. So I would always do those diets, and they would kind of work because you're not giving food to the Candida. However, I find that the problem with those diets is that they don't address your gut microbiome. So when I originally, I battled Candida for 15 years. Wow. I've done juice fasts and water fasts and cleanse kits galore. I even had this machine that would they're supposed to zap parasites with electricity, and you'd hold it for 2 hours, and it would I was trying stuff. I worked in the health food store, so I was exposed to a lot of different things. I did the oregano oil. I did the bentonite psyllium husk caprylic acid cleanse. I did that for 9 months in my early 20s. 9 months straight. I had no sugar at all. I didn't even do the berries or the apples, and I felt okay because the Candida was kind of at kind of pushed aside a little bit. Yeah. But I was having other issues that were coming up from it, like the acne and the joint pain, and other things were happening to my body. And I was like, okay, well, I need balance. I don't want to trade some symptoms for other symptoms, right? Yeah. Just because the diet kind of masks it. Because if you're not eating sugar, you're not technically feeding the yeast. So the yeast kind of die off, but you're not feeding your bacteria to grow strong so the yeast doesn't come back. Because what happens is when you start to eat other foods, or you start incorporating fruit again, then the yeast, they have a whole playing field full, or empty, I should say, so that they can just take over again. And that's what would happen to me. I would do these cleanses and it would be okay for a little bit. And then when I started eating regular food again, it just came back with a vengeance, because I just wasn't fixing my microbiome. And I wish that there were microbiome tests back then when I was dealing with all of this, so that I could find out what was really going on. But they didn't exist back then. We really didn't know much about the microbiome back then. So it's only been in the last 5-ish, maybe 6 years that the microbiome's really taken steam. Yeah. So now that we do the gut test, now I can see, like, I can watch my gut improve over the years. But back then I would say my gut was probably like super low. Yeah, I just
Yeah.
have that colony, my army, right? Like, our gut microbiome is our first line of defense against all kinds of pathogenic bacteria and yeasts and other stuff, right? It protects us, and it creates vitamins, and like, it turns some vitamins into other vitamins that are essential to us. It creates short chain fatty acids, which are anti-inflammatory and gut healing and all this stuff. I had leaky gut, and I took L-glutamine supplements, like trying to heal my gut and everything. I just was not feeding my good bacteria, even though I took
Wow.
probiotics. The probiotics are transient, so they help on the way, but they don't stick around. You have to build your own forces, and how you do that is eating fiber variety. And I didn't know that back then. I just
Wow.
thought I would take all these supplements and it would get rid of it. But after 15 years, I was still battling it. I would get sick every like 2 months with either a yeast infection, a bladder infection. I had a lot of bladder infections in my life, like some so painful that they were like moving up towards the kidneys, and I had to take
Wow.
antibiotics, and then I'd get a yeast infection the next month because of the antibiotics. Like, I was just like,
Yeah.
pulling my hair out trying to fix this.
Totally.
So the straw was the heart flutters, because I got those heart flutters and I was like, hey, like, that's like a really immediate symptom. Not like, yeast infection is like, it's really annoying, but it's not like, oh my, I could die from this.
Yeah.
Right? Like the heart flutter, like you die from a heart attack.
Yep.
And, if you're unlucky, right?
Yep.
Some people survive, which is wonderful, but
Yep.
I was like so scared. So that was kind of my straw. And then when I started eating raw foods, I didn't do it for weight loss. I didn't do it to get rid of my candida. I didn't do it to heal my joint pain. Like, I didn't do it for any of the symptoms that I had. I did it mainly so that I didn't have the heart palpitations anymore, but also just for overall health. I was like, I just need to be healthy.
Right.
I don't need to focus on my diseases. I don't need to think of my gut problems. I don't need to think about any of that. All I want to do is focus on eating fresh raw foods and try to make that work. Like, I don't want to worry about if I'm going to heal or not. I just wanted to make it work. And over the months, it was just like, this works. Like, I'm noticing things, like my skin cleared up. I stopped breaking out for the first time in forever, decades.
What was that like for you?
Oh my gosh, it was amazing. Seriously, like, I was just like, because it took a while for it to heal.
Yeah.
And it took actually years for the acne scars to lighten and disappear. I did like a combination of red light therapy about 4 years into my journey. I was doing almost daily red light therapy to help get rid of, I used to have like, I know my camera's not that great, but I used to have these like, kind of like, I want to say like melasma or something, but like a dark patch, and it would get worse in the sun.
Yeah.
So like my acne scars, because I had a lot of scars on my cheek here and on my chin. So when I'd go outside, you could see my acne scars, like they'd get dark.
Right.
Dark. And it looked like my face was dirty, even though it was clean. And I didn't like wearing foundation, and I don't like wearing foundation. I wear like a tinted moisturizer that's like natural and stuff. So, but I couldn't even cover them up. Like, they were just like so dark. So I did red light therapy to help with that. And it really, really lightened it. So now I'm like very happy with the way my skin is.
Yeah. Because you can't tell. It doesn't look like there's ever been a trace of acne. And one of my brothers, he had really bad cystic acne. And I mean, he still has scars. And so he has a beard to cover the scars from the cystic acne, because it doesn't just go away.
No. And I was lucky enough not to get like the pitted ones, the ones that kind of like are indentations.
Yes.
Mine were more skin tone discoloring.
Yeah.
So, which is a lot easier to change than like an indentation, because that's just kind of like, that's just the way it healed, right?
Yeah.
So I was lucky enough not to have those, but I did have all those like dark, they look like spider veins. Like,
yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And then like when I had acne, I also had anxiety, like just, anxiety because your body's like constantly like in a state of stress because you're not feeding it properly. I wasn't sleeping properly. I wasn't exercising a lot. Like my body was just like totally out of balance. So I had a lot of anxiety and a lot of cortisol running through my system.
Yeah.
And I would sit at my desk and I'd like touch my face a lot. So it would cause like, they would stick around a lot longer than they should have.
Yeah, totally.
yeah, after those 4 months, 4 to 5 months, and I stopped breaking out, I was like, oh my, like, is this it?
Wow.
Is this, is this it? I was just like
It
so
happened.
excited.
That's so
Yeah.
amazing. I love too that you talked about the refeeding of the gut and focusing on that with a positive mindset. I know one of the books that you mentioned that you really love is Fiber Fueled by Dr. Bill. I can never say his last name.
Full switch.
Bull Switch.
Full switch.
What an amazing book that is. And there's all this science now showing, I mean, it is just stacked on feeding your gut, feeding the microbiome, and it being a variety. And my husband, for almost 10 years lived in Costa Rica, and he talks about the jungle there and how lush it is. And you need variety for it to be able to function that way. And that's actually kind of how our gut microbiome is we need that variety, because a radish has a different chemical makeup than lettuce, than mango, and that is all bringing different types of probiotics and prebiotics to our gut microbiome to begin to heal it, which is so amazing. So what's cool is you didn't even know that science at that time, did you?
No, I didn't. And that's why when I look back now, like I did a how to get rid of Candida video probably about like 2 years into my journey, because I was like, I don't have any yeast infections anymore, and I don't have any of the symptoms I used to have. I was like, I felt finally free from Candida, and I didn't have to restrict my fruit intake. I ate tons of fruit, but it was really like the low fat and the high fiber variety. Those were the two keys that I feel were crucial to getting my gut back in balance, because we always have yeast. It always lives there, but it just lives in, its appropriate amount. Like it doesn't overgrow, because you built your colony so big that it lives in, the most of your colon, as opposed to the other way where the yeast takes over and your bacteria is like this little tiny colony and they're like, so you need to kill off the yeast. But like build up yours, build up your bacteria so they take over. So the yeast becomes, the small colony. But yeah, I didn't know about Fiber Fueled. I read the book about, I would say like maybe just over 3.5 years ago. And that's when I started on my, gut awakening, so to speak. Nate and I, we test our guts twice a year in January and July, just to see how it is, because we geek out on it. Like it's not like there's that, like our guts are amazing. We have like awesome digestion. We can eat everything and anything. We don't have to do food combining or what have you. Like we can eat anything, fruits and vegetables and all kinds of stuff together, and we have like no issues. So we do our gut testing just to keep on point with it, and kind of challenge ourselves, like, can we get our score up a little bit more, right? Like, what else can we do? So since the last score, Nate and I, we eat the same pretty much, like 99% we eat the same. So our gut scores are super similar. And when you're in a relationship with somebody, like an intimate relationship, you do share bacteria, kissing, that kind of stuff. So there is bacteria shared, and we make sauerkraut each other. So like when you make your own sauerkraut, your bacteria go into the sauerkraut along with the bacteria that's natural on the cabbage itself.
Oh, that's fascinating.
So that's why communities have similar bacteria, because they would, in the past, they would share ferments and stuff, that they would share their bacteria with family and friends and people in the community. So that's a really fascinating thing too. So when Nate makes it, I get some of his bacteria, and when I make it, even though our hands are bacteria.
Absolutely.
So you're sharing bacteria together. So we have very similar microbiome scores.
Cool.
Both at the 94%.
Wow.
So yeah, and when I started, my very first gut microbiome test was 83%. So I've increased it to 94% over the last 3 years, 3.5 years. And I just did that easily by increasing the amount of variety that I had in my diet, and increasing the inulin-rich foods, and working on certain bacteria that I needed more balance on, because coming from not being breastfed, I was very imbalanced in all kinds of bacteria. So I've really had, 3 years ago when my score was 83, I could only imagine what it was when I started raw.
Right.
Like
Because
how low?
I'm sure not only were you not breastfed, but everybody in Western society has been on antibiotics. So I'm sure you'd been on rounds of
Yeah.
antibiotics. And so you're starting where everybody who's listening is probably starting as well.
Yeah.
We're
And
compromised.
And we know that it's possible to grow the gut. Like we just have to go slow with incorporating new fibers into the diet. Like it's funny whenever I post about sunchokes. Sunchokes are one of our top gut foods. Sunchokes and onions. They're really, really high in inulin, and inulin is a really powerful, strong prebiotic fiber, which feeds a lot of the bacteria that produce the short chain fatty acids that are anti-inflammatory and gut healing, right?
Wow.
So we need to eat more of those foods, asparagus and chicory family foods, dandelion greens, a lot of the bitter vegetables that people are kind of like, some of, the fruity people who are like all into the fruit, they're like, well, if it's bitter, it's not human food. But it's like, it's not necessarily because it's not human food. It's actually microbiome food,
It's really
right?
good. Yeah.
So we have to think also when we're healing our bodies, when we're fueling our cells, like I hear people say, like, I'm feeding every cell of my body. And it's like, well, you have to also think of the 39 trillion that live in your gut.
Yeah.
Which there are more of them than there are of cells of you.
Totally.
So like we have to feed them fiber too. And if it comes in a bitter form, so be it. But like I said, when I share things about like lots of onions and lots of sunchokes, people are like, oh, sunchokes, they call them fart chokes because they get a lot of gas. And that's another thing that I wanted to talk about is gas, is that a lot of people think that having zero gas equals flawless digestion, which is not true, because gas is a sign that your microbiome is creating these short chain fatty acids and doing stuff, right? It's good. It's the excessive amount of gas that just is a signal to your body that you overdid that amount of fiber for the bacteria in your gut. And most people who have excessive amounts of gas from, say, sunchokes or adding more fiber to their diet, it's not the food that's the problem. It's their weak gut microbiome that just needs some TLC, some tender love and care, right?
Yeah.
It just needs some support and to go slow. So if you get a lot of gas when you add more plants into your diet, just realize that it's not the plant's fault. It's that you aren't strong enough to digest them yet. But you can build up the strength as you increase slowly with the plant foods, slowly with the new varieties. So we recommend, like a lot of people will say like, well, sunchokes are only here like, because they're seasonal winter root, and they'll eat like tons of them all at once and get like tons of gas. And I'm like, well, you got to do small, like a little chunk, grate it in your salad and be consistent with it so that you feed your bacteria. They're living organisms, right? Just like your pets, right? If you only feed your pets once a week, they need food every day, just like our bacteria need food every day. So we need to give our bacteria smaller amounts every day so that they can grow big and strong. And then when they get bigger and stronger, you can eat more fiber, and it just, it's a beautiful thing.
And I even experienced that. And I've heard comments of friends who've experienced that whenever just going plant-based and increasing fiber from just a traditional American Western diet or from a heavy animal-based diet, when you begin just incorporating more of the plant foods, you do notice a change in your digestion. And I think what I've heard and observed, a lot of people think of that as very negative. I've had friends. My mother-in-law is amazing. She eats vegan and she cooks a lot of high fiber foods, or creates a lot of high fiber foods. And so I've heard people comment like, oh, sometimes if I eat too much of that salad or something, then I get gassy. I don't think that's good for my stomach. And I think that's a really common way people think about it. It's like, oh, it made my stomach hurt, so it's not good. But like what you're saying, it's almost like they're going to the gym for the first time and they're picking up a 20-pound weight and lifting it. They're like, that was really heavy. That's not good for me. Where they need to go slow. They, just having one huge fiber-rich meal when you're not used to having that much fiber, when your gut has not had the exercise, is not the way to dive in. It's like diving into the deep end. You have to slowly incorporate those things, slowly start creating more diversity and transitioning into that way of life. And For you, it sounds like you kind of went off the deep end though. And I know a lot of people do. I mean, for me, I kind of had to do that when I went vegan. It was all or nothing because I knew if I even just allowed myself a little cheat here or there, then it would be over. And there was a transition period for me. My tummy was a bit of a mess for a little while. Did you?
I hear you. That's very, very true. And I love that you brought up the exercise thing because I'll tell people, I'm like, okay, so we challenge our muscles with weights, and that's uncomfortable. We challenge our cardiovascular system with cardio workouts, and that's uncomfortable. We challenge our metabolism with cold baths and showers, and that's uncomfortable. We challenge our mind with meditation, and that's uncomfortable. We challenge our breath, our lungs with breath work, and that's uncomfortable. And it's like, well, why is the gut any different, right? We got to challenge the gut, but go slow, like you don't jump into like a 3-hour meditation. It's like, that's going to be boring. Yes. You start with 5 minutes, right? Like start slow, be more consistent with it and grow the gut. But yeah, I dove right deep in there. But when I think about it, I had serious gut issues before. So when I went over to raw, it was like, I didn't really notice because I was already having a lot of gas and bloating and pain and everything. And then when I went raw, I still had gas and bloating when I first started, obviously, as my gut was shifting, but it kind of dissipated really quickly. And another thing I want to mention really quickly is to chew your food. Chew your food, because if you chew your food more thoroughly, your bacteria can do a much better job at fermenting it and digesting it, and your enzymes and everything can do it better too. And you get more nutrition out of your food if you chew it more thoroughly. And, like a good average range is 20 to 40 chews per bite. And most people only chew 5 to 7, maybe 12 times. Yeah. Right. So it's like, we really need to focus more on the mechanics of digestion, not just that. But yeah, it's interesting when people move over to more plants, they think that the gas is bad, but it's like, no, it's actually a sign that your gut's growing.
Yeah. The saliva too, it has so many enzymes. And so as you're masticating your food and you're getting that saliva in there, it's just helping that whole breakdown process and that whole digestion process, which is it's a very important part of your whole entire microbiome, because your microbiome isn't just in your belly, it starts in your mouth. And so you got to think of your food as starting in your mouth. It's not just going to your belly. I love the raw food. I think for a lot of people feels very extreme, but I do know that whenever I was first introduced to it, it was because I've dealt with incurable, and I'm using air quotes here for those that are listening, incurable diseases. And I've heard some incredible stories of people dealing with incurable things. And the first time that I was introduced to it, I was reading a book by George Malcolmus. He's the founder of Hallelujah Acres. And he had stage 4 colon cancer, and he decided not to go the conventional medical route because his mom had the same cancer and had died of it. And he watched her go through the chemo and all of those things. So he met one of his friends was a random hippie health nut, and just had him start juicing carrots and eating all this raw. He just went completely raw, and he's 93 years old today. So he had that in his 40s, and he's thriving and doing well and still has perfect eyesight. So I just think those kinds of stories need to be out there. And that's why I love that you're sharing your story, because we need to know that there's other options, that you can attempt to go after your health in a way where there's not negative side effects as big as what might be with some conventional treatments. And you can go about things a more natural way. And really, whenever, I think a lot of people will get into health stuff when they have a health crisis. Oftentimes it's not before. Usually there's something that is really catching their attention, whether it's pain, whether it's weight, whether it's acne, whatever the pain point is. That's what kind of pushes people over the edge. And from my perspective, having had to have many surgeries for endometriosis, I think that it's more extreme to get cut open and have a 6-month to a year recovery time post a huge surgery where they're scraping your internal organs of endometriosis than changing your diet to eating an abundance of fruits and veggies and drinking lovely smoothies and making raw wraps and enjoying your food and healing and your skin clearing up and your energy getting better. And you don't sneeze. I don't sneeze after I eat meals anymore. I used to sneeze after every meal that I had. And so I think those things are really interesting. And we're always learning and growing. And your story is just so incredible. I just am so inspired by you and the positivity piece, because I think too, with the raw food world, I've noticed I think there has been people who have gone into it and maybe they've come with eating disorders and extremist mentalities that is just an unhealthy thing. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because I think I love when you share on that. I feel like you have such a healthy perspective on that. I think it's important for people to hear.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, because that is a very, very important topic. And there have been people within the raw community who have passed away, sadly, from complications. And a lot of people will attribute it to the diet, and they'll say, well, they were raw vegan, so it was raw vegan that was the problem. But what we don't realize is that 10,000 people a year die with eating disorders. And most of those people are not vegan, let alone raw, right?
Yeah.
And no one questions what they're eating.
Totally.
Right? Because eating disorders have nothing to do with the food. Eating disorders are a mental illness. And it's like a dysmorphic view of food and our relationship with it and our bodies. So these people need psychological help, and they gravitate to a vegan or a raw vegan diet because it's so clean, and it kind of in a way justifies their behaviors when it comes to their relationship with food. So they can kind of get away with it in a way because they feel like they're doing something good for their body, and at least they're eating some really good quality foods, but their relationship with the food is disordered. And so I know that's where people feel like it's so restrictive and stuff. But when I look at it from a standpoint where I am eating way more variety of food than I ever have in my entire life on any other diet that I've been on. Nate and I eat on average over 80 different kinds of plants a week.
Wow.
So like we did it one time. We were like, because Dr. Will in his book is like, like 30 different, plants is where you people
count them. Yeah. I've done it where you're writing them all down.
So we wrote down a list of everything that we buy in a week, and we're like, it was like 83. Like, wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah. But so even though we don't eat things like cooked foods or grains or whatever, we eat more variety than most people who are eating a whole food plant-based diet eat, right? So in a way we are eating a lot of variety, and I feel that I'm in complete control of what I choose to eat. And I don't choose raw because I'm scared of cooked food. I don't choose raw because if I don't eat raw, I'm never going to heal from this. And I don't choose raw because I'm scared of aging or I'm scared of whatever, right? Because a lot of people choose raw because they're given either an absolute or a guarantee, or they're given fear. And there are some influencers who do use fear to get their point across in the wellness community in general, not just raw vegan.
Yeah, not just raw. You hear that in the carnivore sector, in the keto sector, in the wellness industry at large.
Yeah, so there's a lot of fear going around, and people get scared. Like you brought up the carnivore, they say plants are trying to kill you. And, when people hear that in a 15-second reel, they get scared. They're like, well, wait, I need more information, right? So then they go hunting down and looking through the different rabbit holes of where you can go. And there is a lot of fear there. And so when you make diet choices from a place of fear, this is where eating disorders kind of sprout, and they can grow from that fear. So when I choose my food, I choose raw because I want raw. Yeah. And I choose raw because it's colorful and I feel hydrated and I feel epic. I love eating raw food. So it's like, why not eat what I love? And why not eat abundantly as well? Because I do see a lot of people come into the raw food world, and they don't eat enough calories and they lose a lot of weight right away. Or they go into the very restrictive kind of like only fruit realm, and they kind of cling to these ideas that is the, you know, the true way humans need to eat, just fruit or whatever. But
they're not going just raw, they're going extreme within the raw realm, where it's like they only will eat bananas or they'll only eat fruit, like you're saying, rather than the abundance mentality of it all.
Exactly. And then what I see behind the scenes, because I speak with hundreds, if not thousands of people every year, people send me DMs because I speak out about this, and because I'm not, you know, all fruit, or I'm not really extreme, or I don't do like detoxes and cleanses and all that kind of stuff. I maintain balance and variety. That's like my main goal, and a balance between both fruit and vegetables, because I value fruit just as much as I value vegetables, like, and fruit and grains, and, or not grains, but sprouts. Like, I value these things equally. I don't put emphasis or put fruit on a pedestal, and I don't put greens on a pedestal. And they're all on the pedestal, right? They all belong there, and they're all necessary for health. So when I do speak out about this kind of stuff, I get tons of people messaging me, and they're like, oh yeah, I did this for a year, and then now my digestion's even worse because they've started to limit. They go on it, you know, those limitations are like limiting diets, right? Where a lot of times people will experience benefits because they've eliminated all of these other things, and now they have zero gas, perfect, flawless digestion or whatever, because when they go carnivore, they're only eating meat, they're not eating any fiber. So their gut isn't challenged at all. And then they suddenly feel better because they don't have gas, right? When it actually wasn't the meat that was fixing it, it was the lack of the challenge to the gut. It's kind of like saying laying on the couch feels good because you're not going to the gym and challenging your muscles, right? It's like someone saying like, oh, you know, I went to the gym the other day and I'm so sore today, so I'm never going to the gym again because that was bad. You know, like when you think about it that way, it's like, yes, we do need to challenge our bodies. And the elimination diets are only there for a short period of time. When you start to reincorporate those foods back in, you're not supposed to stay in that state. Right? So for people who have severe gut issues, sometimes they need to go there for a small amount of time, and then they can move forward with adding more variety and go slow with that instead of continuing to restrict. Because I know people who have gone on raw or juicing for long periods, and then they have gut dysbiosis, and then eventually they're only eating lettuce and avocados because that's all they can tolerate, or just eating mangoes and lettuce, and they can't eat anything else because everything else causes them discomfort. So they eliminate further instead of actually trying to grow their gut.
Oh, that's so interesting. I love that you touched on that, because you do hear that all over the wellness space, where somebody will, oh, I just eat beef now and all my health issues have gone away. But you're right, that is more about the elimination aspect than it is about actually addressing the underlying issue. Because maybe they did eliminate the food that was irritating their gut, but they didn't necessarily get to the healing aspect of incorporating variety, because our bodies are supposed to have variety and eat plenty of nutritious foods. Now, for you, what is your response? Because I'll get this question just as whole food plant-based eater. I don't eat grains, but I do eat beans. But I oftentimes people will be concerned for my protein intake. Can you touch on that topic?
So it's been almost 10 years for me. It's like 9 and a bit, right? And I have not had any issues with protein or needing protein. The thing is that, like, you know, and most people who may know also, is that there's amino acids to make proteins in absolutely every plant food. They're there. We just have to eat them and eat a variety of them and eat enough of them. And I think a lot of people who experience issues with low protein are people who are on restrictive calorie diets, who are under eating calories. And I know that I want to touch on this really quick, that, you know, in the longevity community, they talk a lot about calorie restriction. But if you actually read those studies, When they say calorie restriction, they're not meaning to eat less than you need. They mean to eat an optimal amount to cover your BMR plus your activity.
Really good.
Right? Whereas in the studies themselves, they had two groups. They had one group who was eating the appropriate amount of calories for their bodies and activity levels. And then they had another group that was overeating calories and eating way too much. So when they say calorie restriction, they're meaning calorie optimization, not restriction. I wish that they weren't using that word, because people run with it and they're like, I'm only going to eat 1,400 calories and I'm going to live longer. But that's really
good.
Yeah, no, because they did other studies where they had people actually restricting their calories and not compensating for their activity level. And they actually aged faster than those who ate an appropriate amount of calories for their body, which usually, depending on your height, your activity level, all kinds of other factors, is like anywhere between, I'd say 1,900 to 2,400 calories. Right? Yeah. We're like supposed to eat an abundance of food. We're not supposed to restrict down to our BMR, because our BMRs are what I call your bare minimum requirement. That's like
really good.
You need a lot more than that.
Yeah.
When it comes to protein, a lot of people who are eating 1,400 calories, protein is the least of their issues, because they're under eating fiber, they're under eating minerals, they're under eating vitamins, they're under eating antioxidants, they're under eating a lot more than just protein.
Yeah.
So protein comes with the package. And if we eat an abundance of all different kinds of things, we get enough protein, right?
Yeah.
Like Nate and I, we eat on average, it depends on the day, but we eat around 2,400 calories a day. And when we're working out, sometimes that's a little bit more. I've gone up to sometimes 2,700 if I'm really hungry. Like, I just listen to my body, and if I'm hungry, I eat more. But what's really interesting is that you're building muscle when you can increase the weight at the gym, right? And when you get stronger. This is a sign that your body is building muscle. And in order to build muscle, you need to get adequate protein. Yes. Now, Nate and I, we are consistently increasing our weights at the gym, and we are consistently experiencing strength. Like, I'm shocked at how much weight I can lift now than when I first started lifting, right? So in my books, I'm like, I'm not eating enough protein, right? And when we do our chronometer, we average anywhere between 55 and 80 grams of protein a day. But again, we don't eat just fruit. We eat tons of greens and lots of variety of greens. We eat a lot of vegetables, and we eat a lot of sprouts, lentil sprouts, mung bean sprouts. And we do have fresh peas that we add to our meals occasionally here and there. But really, overall, it's just eating enough so that you get enough. Because, when they talk about protein deficiency, usually they're referring to people who are eating a very, 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 very insufficient low calorie diet. And you can be, in the low protein range on any diet. You could be eating meat and be there, because it's overall calories and overall variety that I feel is key. Yeah. So I'm not worried about it at all. Yeah. I actually question people when they say that. I'm like, okay, well, you're worried about my protein. Only 3% of the Western culture gets enough fiber a day. Like,
literally.
Fiber, 97% of people are under eating fiber, and we're worried about protein.
Yeah. And people don't talk about the fact that too much protein is actually really unhealthy for you as well. There is an optimal amount. And I have found, and I love what you said, which is as long as you are eating a proper amount of calories, which around 2,500 or whatever is appropriate for your body and activity, it's almost impossible if you are eating a healthy whole foods diet that you aren't going to get the protein that you need. Because even in something like a potato, which has the least amount of protein, that still has the percentage of protein that your body needs to be able to build and to be able to create muscle and all of that kind of stuff. So I think that there's a lot of myths out there. I think there's been a lot of marketing around, oh, you need your protein, but I don't think people really understand. And oftentimes what I have found is when people are asking me if I'm getting enough protein, they don't even know how much protein is appropriate for their body or how much they're getting. They just correlate protein with you're not eating meat, so that's the only place that you can get protein, but that's
Mhm.
not the case. Protein is in everything, particularly in vegetables.
Yes, exactly. I know, like, I'm like, well, if you're worried, just eat more salads with sprouts in it.
Yeah, exactly. And you
Right.
can track. A chronometer is a great one. My Fitness Pal is a great one. You can just track, input what you're eating throughout the day, and you can see if you're getting an adequate amount of protein or not, which I think is a really good thing to do. So, what does a day in the life of Alyssa and Nate look like for food? What do you guys wake up and eat? What is I know that people who are listening are curious about what you're eating during a day.
Yeah. So, it varies every single day. It's pretty all over the map, like things that we want to make. But overall, we'll just take an average day. This would be like, I would say the ideal day. But like we wake up in the morning and we have some fruit before we go to the gym. And then when we're done the gym, we have a smoothie. So we aim to get like 800 or more. Like we try to get 1,000 calories worth of fruit just first thing in the morning. So
Okay.
whole fruit and smoothies is usually our breakfast stuff. And then lunch is typically a really big giant salad. And when I started, almost every single day I would make my French dressing. And for those listening, it's 5 medjool dates, 2 cloves of garlic, the juice of a lemon, a little apple cider vinegar, and half a teaspoon of smoked paprika. And you could put a little chipotle powder in there too, like 1/8 of a teaspoon. And you blend that with a cup of water. And that was my dressing, because salads are 100 to 200 calories per pound, right?
Mhm.
So they're really super low calorie density. If you make a big giant salad, it could be huge. It could only be like 200 calories, right?
Right,
And so
right.
you're going to be hungry after.
Yeah.
So the dates and putting fruit in our dressings keeps the dressings low fat. And
Mm.
sometimes we'll add chia seeds to that to make sure we get our omega-3.
Yeah.
But that adds like 400 calories to our salad. So we're easily getting 600 calories in our salad when we use a fruit-based or date-based dressing.
Mm.
And then for dinner, that's when we usually make like something fun, like we'll make raw chili or a wrap, or like we have some raw pizza in the
Oh,
dehydrator right now.
yum.
We're going to make that for tomorrow. We have a dinner with friends, but we try to make something fun. Not that salads aren't fun, but like
Yeah.
something sushi.
Pizza's fun.
Yeah,
Mhm.
sushi rolls or a raw soup or curry or something like that. We'll make that usually for dinner. And if we don't do that, we'll just have another salad, usually with our, more fats in it, like hemp seeds, or we'll
Mm.
make like a Caesar. Nate has this wakame Caesar that is like
Mm.
such an amazing
Oh,
dressing.
yeah.
But yeah, we'll do like our more creamier dressings or like heavier greens, like kales and stuff like that with our evening meal. But lunch is usually more like hydrating. I noticed if I have a more hydrating dinner, I wake up in the middle of the night needing to
Mm.
pee or whatever. So I
Yep.
like to keep the more hydrating salads for lunch,
Mm.
and the more fats with the darker leafy greens, or like the dehydrated stuff. I like to have that more in the evening.
Mm.
Um, and that's basically our day.
That sounds like a delicious day. I
Mhm.
want to come over.
And then food snacks, obviously. I feel like in between meals, if we're hungry, like I usually like between stuff, sometimes I'll go in the kitchen, I'll just stand at the sink and eat tomatoes
Yeah.
or bananas or whatever. I'll just like snack on something. But yeah.
So to the just to if you don't mind touching really quick on the low fat aspect, I think that's interesting too. I think whenever I started learning more about the low fat side of things, a lot what you'll get concerned about is, we've heard our whole lives, healthy fats, get your healthy fats.
Yeah.
There was an interview I listened to with I believe it's Dr. Shiraz and his wife. They're neurologists, and they were talking about how actually too much fat is not good for overall health, and it's increases risk of stroke and cardiovascular issues. So can you touch on how much healthy fat that you get within your day? Like, what does that look like on a practical side of things, and why that is that you don't need to eat like buckets of avocados or olive oil or whatever?
Yeah. So yeah, with the fat thing, we've got omega-6 and we got omega-3, right? And the body needs that wonderful ratio of either 1 to 1, omega-3 to 6, or 4 to 1, omega-6 to 3. So you've got 4 6s to 1 3, give or take. But that's like the ratio. But North Americans are eating 20 to 1, if not more, omega-6 to 3. So in the body, there is one enzyme that converts both omega-6 into its pro-inflammatory constituents, or like pieces. And it also converts omega-3 into EPA and DHA, which are those essential fats that we are so desperately needing to get from our diet. So if you're overeating omega-6s, you're not going to have enough of that enzyme to work on the omega-3, right? Because it's just so busy working on the omega-6. And the omega-6 is pro-inflammatory, which is why people, out there in the carnivore world, they'll be like seed oils, right? And I mean, there's truth to it, because when you're eating a huge amount of oils that are loaded with omega-6, you're not actually effectively making enough EPA and DHA, which our brain and our heart need, and our cells. Actually, every single cell in our body has a cell membrane made from fats, and the fats need to be flexible and fluid. And omega-3 is there to do that. So we need to eat more omega-3 rich foods. So Nate and I, we try to eat chia seeds or flax seeds every single day to get our omega-3 amount. And we also lower our omega-6 down as much as we can to have that more ideal ratio of omega-3 to 6. That way the enzyme can deal with both of them. And we can still convert omega-3 into EPA and DHA. Whereas we're not overloading our body with all these omega-6s. And omega-6 is easy to get. Omega-6 is delicious.
Yeah. Omega-6 is avocado.
And all nuts, cashews and almonds and all of them. They are very high in omega-6, and peanuts is the highest with the ratio. I don't even know really how much it is, but it's the highest ratio. There's like, peanuts have the least amount of omega-3 of any of the fats.
Wow.
Super, super, super small. And then people are eating avocados and peanut butter, and they're putting olive oil in their salads, and they're eating just way too many 6s. And we're not saying 6s are bad. We're saying they need to be in an appropriate ratio for the human body. We need to be eating more omega-3s. And the sources for omega-3s, flax is the best, followed very closely behind with chia. But a thing that people don't really know is that greens, specifically romaine, actually have a large omega-3. Yeah. One big head of romaine, and we're talking a big head, like not one of those hearts from Costco. We're talking like a big head of romaine with the big leaves that are falling over. One head of romaine, if you ate that whole head, you would get 70% of your daily needs for omega.
Wow.
So adding more greens into your diet, along with the chia seeds and berries. Blackberries are actually quite high in omega-3. So berries are a great source, as well as some algae too, like spirulina, chlorella, blue-green algae have a little bit of omega-3s in them as well. And you can also get a vegan supplement if you're, conscious of that and you want to have like a DHA or something. You can totally do that, but we don't. We just make sure that we get everything from our foods, and we just make sure that our omega-6 is not sky high. We try to incorporate the omega-3s in there as well.
That's really good. So do you guys supplement at all, or do you primarily get all of your nutrition from your food?
So we have vitamin K2, which we rarely take. I mean, I don't even know the last time I took it, probably months ago. I don't know. But we prefer to get our K2 from natto, and we actually have some dried natto that we just add to our smoothies to get our vitamin K2, because natto is the highest vegan source of K2, which is essential for bone and teeth formation and that kind of thing.
And natto is a fermented bean. Am I right about that? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It's fermented soy. And, naturally it's kind of got this like really weird texture and kind of weird flavor. So that's why we like the dried one, because it's like, I don't know. It's an acquired taste for sure to have the natto, but it's a fermented food again. Yes. And it's super high in vitamin K2. There is some K2 in other fermented foods as well, because K2 is actually converted in the body from K1, which you find abundantly in greens and other plant foods. So the bacteria convert K1 into K2, and that's where we get that nutrient from, is from our gut. And that's why it's so important to feed our gut, right?
Wow,
So
that's
fermented
amazing.
foods are incredible. And we also have a vitamin B12 and a vitamin D. But the thing with the supplements is I always suggest people to get a blood test. Get a blood test and see where you're at, and then determine whether you want a supplement or not, because sometimes you don't have to. Like we take, I don't even know when the last time I took a B12, probably like 2 weeks ago, I'd say I took a B12. I don't even know when I took the last D, but I take a blood test to see my B12 and my D levels. And I will be taking the blood tests every year or every year and a half or so, whenever we can, just to watch my levels. And if my levels start to lower, then I'll start to supplement more. But right now, my B12 is higher than mid-range, as is my vitamin D. So I'm not too worried about it.
Really good.
You know, like over 9 years now. And I'm not good with supplements. I don't remember to take them.
Well, even in the China study, I remember Dr. Campbell touching on that. I was surprised to read that he was pretty anti-supplement. He is all about getting all your nutrition from food. Now, I think B12 is a bit of an exception, because that is something that we would get from gardening and being really involved in our food creating process, really, and getting in the dirt and getting that bacteria. But I love what you said, because also depending on where you live, like you guys now, you live in Las Vegas and it's sunnier there. So I would imagine you're getting more vitamin D than people who are living in the colder areas. And so, and you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to just take like actually you could take too much vitamin D, and that's dangerous. So it is really good just whenever you're at your general practitioner to ask them to run those tests. And I've never had a doctor not run them for me. If I ask, they're always usually really kind about it, even if they're just like, why? I'm just like, I just want to. So
no.
Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't hurt to get those things checked, just to know where you're at and make sure that you have B12 and vitamin D. I think that's really great. That's so awesome. Okay, Lissa, you're so amazing. Thank you so much. This has been such an incredible call. Can you tell us a little bit about what you offer and what you have out there? I know that you have all these amazing cookbooks that I run and go get them. They are so good. Or I guess uncookbooks, because they're all raw cookbooks, but they're amazing.
Yeah, so I know I like it when people are like, oh wait, not cookbook.
Yeah.
I like to call them just recipe books, because, you know,
very good.
Easier way to say it. But
yes.
So we've got all our stuff. You can go to my store, payhip.com/rawfoodromance, or you could go to Nate's store. He's got like his dude food, and he's got his microgreens growing course and his raw vegan kitchen essentials course in there too. His is payhip.com/rawnettynate. And it's N with the number 8. So anyone who's listening.
I'll put it in the show notes as well. So you'll have all of these links.
Cool. And then, I've got my YouTube channel, Lissa's Raw Food Romance. I'm on Instagram is where I'm most active, at Raw Food Romance. That's where most people can message me on Instagram, and they'll probably get a reply within a little bit, unless I'm sleeping, hiking, making raw food, or watching a movie, or spending time with Nate. I'm on there. So
awesome.
Those are my places. Or you can find other links that we have. Like we've got our Amazon list of all the favorite things that we like to use. We've got, links to the Excalibur hydrator that we use, links to skincare that I love. All of those links are at sociatap.com/rawfoodromance. So that brings up a page with a bunch of links. So
and you guys even have a raw food retreat coming up, don't you?
We don't.
You don't? Oh, okay. I thought that you did. I don't know why. I know you've done them in the past. I always keep my eye on when those are going on.
We have talked about it. So maybe it was you heard something.
Yeah.
We're thinking of doing one in 2024, but we haven't had any plans or anything solid for that at all. But we would love to run a retreat. And if we do run a retreat, our goal is to make it immersive. So you won't get any of the food made for you. You make all the food yourself, right?
That's awesome, because that's equiping people to, teach a man how to fish. But in this case, teach a man how to do their raw food.
Exactly, right? Those retreats, And all retreats are really great because you go, you get to chill and relax, and people make food for you, and it's delicious. But when you go home, how do you make the food? How do you know, what blender do you get? How do you know how to shop, right? So we want to empower people with that. And that's something we do want to do. We're not sure we're going to do it this year. We might do it next year. We're not sure yet, but that's on the books. And we are part of multiple different bundles. We've got 3 big ones coming in 2024. Cool. We've got the vegan health bundle coming in March. We've got the raw, exclusively all raw bundle coming in May. And then there's usually another plant-based bundle in June or July and November. So those are some things we like to be part of.
Those are a great way to get lots of resources and lots of books from a variety of different collaborators. I know I've gotten a few of those bundles in the past and I love them. It's just a wealth of information. I mean, it takes a lifetime to go through all of them. It's so amazing. Exactly. And then I'll get from you maybe the link for the gut health test that you do, because I know our listeners, when you were talking about that, I can just hear people saying, what test is she taking? So if you don't mind, I'll get that from you. I'll put that in the show notes. And then also your YouTube video on the Candida cleanse. And
yes,
I think that would be really great.
You, updated Candida video where I talk about gut health and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Yay. Thank you so much, Lissa. This was so awesome. Thank you guys for listening. We always love hearing these incredible healing testimonies, and we're just so grateful to have you on, Lissa. Okay. Have a good night, everybody.